Welcome to the GameDev.tv Community Podcast. I'm your host KB, and I would like to introduce you to industry professionals and people who successfully made their path to the video game industry. I hope that you will enjoy the podcast and get useful tips that will bring you closer to achieving your dreams. Now, let's get right into the podcast.
Yes, so welcome to the GameDev.tv podcast.
Cool, thanks.
So it's John Lee. Can you let the fans know a little bit about who you are, and we'll go from there?
Yeah, my name is John. I'm one of the co-founders of Pickfu. Pickfu is it's a consumer research panel for running really quick polls on your target customers. We have a panel of over 10,000 US consumers who play mobile games, console games, shop online, all of that stuff. So Pickfu is a pretty generic tool, helpful in a lot of different industries, and particularly in mobile gaming.
Awesome. Okay, so then how did you get started with game development? Like, was this something you wanted to do, game development, and make this like business that does mobile games, or was it something totally different?
No, so to be honest, I am not a game developer. I was a software developer, and still am, I guess. So my training was through software development. Used to work in Microsoft and everything, and always wanted to be an entrepreneur, and so that's why we built Pickfu. I do enjoy playing video games. I spent a lot of my childhood playing video games. But yeah, for a game developer, we work with a lot of game developers in Pickfu who use it to help with their, testing their creatives and basically generally making their games better.
Awesome. So then what do you consider yourself? You're like a software engineer, programmer?
Yeah, software engineer, programmer, product guy, entrepreneur. I don't know. I mean, it's
all of them, right? We're
all
jack
of
of all
above,
trades.
Right? Yeah, exactly.
So awesome. So then when did you start learning programming? Was that something before college, or was that during college? Like, when did you know you wanted to be a software engineer?
I knew I wanted to work with computers when my mom dropped off when she bought a computer when I was a teenager, gave me the manual and told me, go figure it out. And so in high school, that's basically when I started learning how to code, coding my own different projects and stuff, and then continue that in college and so on from there.
Awesome. And so how did you discover using the computer? Like, did you trial and error? Did you find something that you interest you and you're like, I need to figure this out?
Yeah. It was, I guess I grew up as a geek, and there's that first computer was it was a 286 SX. I don't know if your listeners will remember any of this stuff, but it was running like an early version of MS DOS, and it was a 300-page manual, and just went through it trying to figure it out, like how all that stuff works. So I was always been interested in that stuff.
Yeah, awesome. And for somebody who wants to get started with like programming, how would you advise them? Like, what was something that worked for you but maybe didn't work for you?
I think following your passion is super important when it comes to going into a creative field, because you can do a lot with code and you can do a lot with sort of game building and stuff, but I would say that it's really glorious from the outside, but there's a lot of trial and error and challenges when you're trying to build something. And so trying to build something that you're passionate about in an area that you care a lot about helps give you that motivation to really push through the tough parts to kind of see it through to completion.
Awesome. I really like that you said that about, for this creative process, it's glorious on the outside, but inside is a lot of trial and error. And it's true. It's like you can get stuck trying to fix something and it just doesn't work for hours, and you go away from it for a few minutes and then the answer pops up and you can solve it.
Yes.
So what has your experience been like learning different languages, and what has helped you like acquire the information and find it? Because I know a lot of programmers, including myself, find it difficult sometimes to like keep the concepts you learn. It's like, I heard about it. I know kind of what it does, but I can't implement it. What advice would you have for that?
Usually the way I learn things is I know everyone's learning style is different, but for myself, I can't learn something unless I actually implement it, like actually use it right then and there. So a lot of times I'll actually I'll read about something, like some kind of new concept or a new approach to something, and that sounds cool, but I'll totally forget about it until I come back later and say, okay, now, we're building this part of Pickfu or whatever, and now I need to go in and implement it. Now I'm going to really learn it because I'm going to actually have to build it myself,
Okay. And then when did you guys start doing Pickfu? Was this something during school or after school?
No, it was after school.
Okay.
Me and my co-founder, we went off to our tech careers at Microsoft and HP, and then we had always wanted to build something together. So we quit our jobs to start our company together. And that was a while ago.
Who's the co-founder? Is that Justin?
Yeah, that's Justin. So we started our company over a dozen years ago, and our first product was a website around aggregating dining menus. So completely not related to this. Pickfu actually came about because we built it as a tool for ourselves. Because since we were just two founders, we were always arguing over design decisions, right? Our backgrounds are software engineers. We don't have a design bone in our body. So, what does this UI look like? What does this menu look like? What is it, which graphics should we use? We were tired of asking our friends and family. They were tired of answering our questions. So we built Pickfu on the side as a way to really tap into the feedback from actual consumers. And we built that a long time ago, put it on the side, never really touched it, but it kind of gained its own following among a couple of different groups of people, of which game developers were one of them.
Wow, that's awesome.
Yeah.
And so for somebody who doesn't really fully understand what Pickfu does, can you explain exactly
Yeah,
what it is?
so it's kind of like a quick split testing with real people, how game developers will use it. Let's say you're working on a mobile game or something, and you're trying to figure out which let's say which app icon you want to use for the App Store. So you have a couple of different variations. You run a poll on Pickfu, you put up your 2 or 3 variations. You say which app would you install on the App Store. The respondents choose the option that they prefer, and they also leave a reason why. So there's a written explanation as to why. So not only do you get the votes, but you also get these explanations from anywhere between 50 to 500 people telling you exactly what they thought of and explaining exactly their choice. So it really gives you an insight into how potential players will view your creative or your game or your app icon before you launch it into the market. So app icons are kind of like the simple use case, but I think what we see more from game devs nowadays is starting earlier in the process to actually test their. So instead of user acquisition, starting earlier in the process during game development to test their concepts, right? Like, let's say you have an idea of this game, of like, there's a certain theme or character art that you have in your mind, but even with a certain character theme or for your character art, you can still have a couple of different revisions. How's this character going to look? Is it going to be like an angry character, a happy character? But is a dark theme, happy theme, light theme, all that stuff. So we see a lot of character design and a lot of sort of scenery design and concepts being tested on Pickfu nowadays.
Wow, that's awesome. And Pickfu sounds amazing. I was like, everybody should get onto it.
Thanks.
Yeah. And then I want to get really into the depths of like the beginning of Pickfu, because starting something is never easy. And so you guys are now, how many years has it been since you guys started Pickfu?
Over 10 years.
So yeah, so it's now we're 10 years in, and it's doing amazing. But what was the beginning like? Like, how is, like, for instance, when people starting their own business or their own game, the beginning is always the most difficult. Just put it out there. How do you take the good feedback, and how did you implement that to make what Pickfu is now today?
I think the key to let's see, a couple of different lessons we learned. Definitely being open to user feedback, like feedback from our customers, and being really responsive to that helped a lot. Building something that we would use. So if you're building a game that you would really want to play, right? We built a tool, and it was a tool that we used constantly. So there are always ways that we try to improve it for ourselves that thankfully resonated with our users as well. And I think the third thing that people probably don't talk about as much is actually having patience. I don't think, it's very rare that you win the lottery and success comes overnight. But I think if you have a good process for doing right by your customers or your players, listening and responding to their feedback, and sort of continually try to improve yourself and your product and your game, then that sets you up for better success and growth.
No, I agree 100%, because You can be in your own head all day thinking you're making something that everybody wants because it's something you want to play too at the same time. But then you realize like the only person that wants to play it is you because you never
Yeah.
listen to the feedback of your players or users. So it's interesting to find like a dichotomy. It's like listen to your players and make something you want to make, but like don't be in a vacuum where you only care about what you want to do because eventually you might make a game nobody wants to play. Who knows?
Yeah.
It just depends.
Yeah.
So
Don't
yeah,
build in a vacuum, because
exactly.
otherwise, unless you're building only for yourself, then
Hmm.
don't build in a vacuum.
Hmm. And so at the beginning, what was the process like to just start Pickfu? Was it we have this business idea and then we need investors, or let's just start this product and see what
No,
happens?
it was just we did not get investors, and so we just wanted to start it. It was something
Mhm.
that it was one of those passion projects where we said, hey, wouldn't it be really cool if we could really tap into instead of asking our friends and family or going to asking 50 randos at a coffee shop, like if we could do this online, right, and
Mhm.
basically build a digital focus group for ourselves, like wouldn't that be cool, and wouldn't how useful would that be to help us in sort of our other product decisions? So it's definitely something driven by passion and interest, where we just decided, let's hunker down for a week or two and try to get a proof of concept up. Let's make sure to get it live. Let's use it a lot for ourselves and put it in front of some people to get some feedback and iterate from there. So we try to put it out there as soon as possible, and it was super rough in the beginning, but
Mhm.
I think through iteration and through sort of listening to the users, like that has helped it a lot.
Mhm. And as co-founder, what were some difficulties you faced that you didn't expect to face as a co-founder?
Um, I think that I think marketing. So this may or may not be true for devs generally. I feel like it might be, but I think
Okay.
that as a developer, I always underestimated how hard marketing was. You think oftentimes as a developer that you have these tools, like coding is a skill, and you think that with that skill you can kind of build anything you want. But there's an entire that I feel like that, and having been in business for a while now, I understand that that is just like one piece of the equation. Whether you're launching a product or you're launching a game, like the marketing aspect of it, sort of the getting eyeballs and awareness, drawing awareness to your product, is a huge part of it and just as important. And so at least you may not have to spend the majority of your time on it, but definitely make sure to not, don't underestimate how much marketing matters in sort of the success of whatever it is that you're trying to build,
Mhm.
and at least think about it. Even if you're not the one doing it, think about how it's going to be done. Think about who's going to be doing it. Think about the right way to do it, because oftentimes that'll factor into the success just as much as the quality of your product.
Mhm. Marketing is hard because it's not something instantaneously. It's not like, hey, I put this out and like, oh, boom, we got a bunch of sales. Sometimes it's like a slow
No.
process as like we
Yeah.
have to slowly let people know and then post in the right areas. So how did you guys figure out a way to make marketing work? Like maybe if you can talk about like the process of like, okay, this didn't work, let's try this. And then now I got a handle of how marketing works.
I wouldn't dare say that I have a handle of how marketing works. I would never
At
say
the
that.
moment, maybe
Like
when
we're
yeah.
all still just trying to figure it out here. I will say that we tried a lot of different channels. We tried posting on social, Facebook, any social channel that we could. We posted our product on Hacker News, like where we thought our users might be, at least just to get some feedback. Um, I think we tried testing with a lot of different user communities. Our product, Pickfu can be used by a lot of different types of businesses and consumers, but just because we can bring value to them, that doesn't mean that necessarily they're the ideal customer type.
Mm, okay.
So actually thinking about, okay, who are your users and who are your power users? And then who are the power users that you bring a lot of value to, but then they also bring a lot of value to you, like as a business or, as a game developer. And I think trying to figure out that equation has been really interesting.
Mhm. Now, is it a constant like rework of plans, being like, this is our marketing strategy for the next 3 months, and like, oh, this is a new marketing strategy, or like, how do you guys like determine what isn't good and what is good? The numbers, statistics.
Yeah, usually it's based on new users and trying to figure out, okay, well, what is the cost of acquisition for this particular marketing channel, whether it's ads or conferences or sponsorships or so on. Taking a look at the users that come in on those channels and understanding, are these good users or bad users? Are they just kicking the tires, or are they sticking around and actually sticking with your product? And usually we try to revamp every quarter, like revisit every quarter to see what things are working and what things we need to, what things we could add to, and what things we need to sort of pull back from.
Mhm. And then I wanted to get a little bit into the program part of the business. Like when somebody wants to join a business like this or startup, what should they focus on to be able to be an effective programmer? Like, is there any like programming patterns they should study, data structures, or should they just, show what they know and see what happens from there?
So I think when we're hiring developers or looking to grow the development team, I think a solid foundation of programming like principles matters a lot for us. Um, like understanding basic data structures and like at least the simplest algorithms and stuff. Um, I know in a lot of day-to-day programming, maybe some of those deep algorithms aren't necessarily used, but I think it's more important for us to understand that a developer sort of knows how to think about the problem,
Hmm.
because it's at its core, development is problem solving, right?
Mhm.
And
Yes.
so what we care about is like knowing that you can have a thoughtful way of approaching a problem and be creative in your approaches on how to solve it. That matters a lot more to us than knowing every facet of the latest, hottest programming language, because that
Mhm.
stuff is always going to change, right?
Exactly. Yeah. So it's like, hey, I'm constantly learning these new things, but it's like, do you really understand it? Do you wish what's
Yeah,
going on in the background? So like,
yeah.
how, for like instance, maybe when you're studying, how do you ensure you're learning the right things? Or do you just build stuff that you care about and then work towards doing that for other people, for yourself in the business?
Um, I think when I'm trying to learn, I try to make sure that, you know, I try to double check myself and understand that I'm understanding the concepts behind what we're learning, like what I'm trying to learn, rather than just going through like usually you're doing some kind of sample like coding example or something, or proof of concept. Like it's easy for someone to just sort of copy the code that you see, or
Yeah.
fill in your variables and press play or launch and see that it runs, and you say, okay, well, I'm done, and so on, right? But for me, it matters a lot more that I'm understanding the concepts behind it, because I feel like if I understand the concept behind it, I can always come back and remember the syntax, or remember exactly like the finer details of how to implement it.
So maybe this is for people who are like impatient, but what if you feel like you're taking so long to like figure out the solution that you could have just copied and pasted? How do you keep yourself from going like the lazy route and just sticking with like, I need to understand this because it's going to help me in the long term?
That's basically what I keep telling myself. It's like if I'm just copying and pasting, then it's gone within the next 30 minutes or the next day.
Hmm.
Like that's not good. That just means that I'm going to have to repeat that time for myself a week, a month, a year later, when I forgot about all this, and I don't want to relearn something from scratch.
Yeah.
So
In fact, what you think is saving you time is actually making you lose more time in the long run. It's kind of ironic.
yeah, exactly.
Mhm. Cool.
Yeah.
So when you started doing Pickfu, was there any like circumstances where you had to make sacrifices and it was like maybe hard times and like how'd you get through it?
Sorry, I didn't catch that last part of your. I think money was tight for us around that time. We were bootstrapped, and we were focused on growing our main product, and that was more based on organic search traffic and digital advertising, both of which are pretty tricky businesses. Um, so I think the constraints on Pickfu when we are building it was literally spend no more time on it beyond what is necessary to get it working, and to improve the product. So it wasn't a lot of time spent on marketing. It wasn't a lot of time spent on, pretty UI or anything like that. It was, let's build the tool that gets the job done as quickly and efficiently as possible.
Mhm.
Um, but I think that having that time constraint actually helps a lot of times, like working within constraints kind of helps the creative process and helps the creation process, because it helps you focus on what's absolutely necessary.
Mm-hmm. No, yeah, that's the most key part. You have to make sure you're actually moving towards the right direction and not going somewhere else because of just lack of
Yeah.
focus or communication. How do you maintain communication in your business?
Yeah, we have a team of over a dozen people now, and we're definitely growing. We're all remote and split up all across the world. So we use digital communication constantly. Slack, Asana, Zoom. I mean, we're basically chatting with each other all the time. The thing we're trying to do better is to limit the number of meetings that people have to have and try to use more of a asynchronous written communication style. Since everyone's on a different schedule, and we like to make sure everyone has flexibility, like work-life balance in their lives. So come and do the work when you want, where you want. As long as you get it done, we're happy.
Mm-hmm. That's really good to build a good culture where it's like work-life balance. So you don't have to feel stressed about your work. Come in, do your creative work, be happy, and then go home and be more, de-stress and then have a good life. And then that way you just stay. You don't have this like, I can't do my work. Because if the employees feel like they can't do something properly, then the work will show. And then it's just this huge spiral downwards of like, oh, we don't like this company, and then this will happen. And then you're like, we could have just treated them right and none of this would have happened.
Exactly. I mean,
yeah.
as when Jess and I were building the company, I mean, we have kids, we drive them around, there's always been work-life balance between ourselves. And so as we build out the company, we just want to make sure that everyone can, we don't want work to get in the way of life, right? Like, so that balance matters a lot to us and to our culture.
It's beautiful. And actually, you mentioned, the mental health of individuals. How do you maintain like a good culture that keeps people like open to communication and to just be able to like express themselves?
So we try to maintain an open door for communication. We check in with everyone on the team pretty regularly. I think as founders, that is one of the most, as the team grows, when you're a founder, you kind of give up pieces of responsibility to other people that you've brought on to do that part of the work. And that's great. But I think one of the things that we cannot ever get rid of or let go of is having that line of communication with our team members, because sort of maintaining that culture is absolutely key to making sure that the business is going to be able to grow. So whether that's through scheduled calls, like scheduled monthly calls or whatnot with everyone on the team, or I think we've done some mental health breaks where we just give everyone the day off just to go and tell everyone, please don't do any work this day. It's a weekday, but just go and take care of yourself, whatever that means, in whatever way you feel is necessary, and we generally have a very flexible time off policy, unlimited vacation days, and so on. Yeah, we try pretty hard to make sure that everyone's in a good state of mind, because everyone knows that it sucks to work when you're not in a good place,
Oh yeah, definitely. No, that's awesome to hear though. It sounds like really good. Okay, so now let's get into Pickfu in mobile gaming. So how did that start? Was that like one of your beginning ideas, or is that something that happened later on?
No, it was one of the kind of the magic of build it and have patience, and potentially they'll come, is that mobile developers came to kind of discovered Pickfu on their own. So some of our earliest users were mobile marketing managers at game studios, and they were using Pickfu to split test and decide on app icons or on App Store art before they launched it, because they knew that having the right creatives, having the right icon, having the right screenshots in the right order would improve the UA, like improve that user acquisition for their games. And so it was these marketing managers in large game studios using it, moving between companies and bringing Pickfu kind of as like a secret tool to other different companies. And so it kind of grew organically in those large companies.
That's so cool to be like, we have this awesome product, but now we can morph it into something like this because there's demand, and then people just come and buy it.
Yeah, exactly.
A little bit more about like what it does exactly? Like it picks off the title screen, or it chooses the best like UI icons, or See, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, Pickfu is at its simplest, Pickfu is asking a question and uploading anywhere between 1 to 8 digital creatives. So you come to Pickfu, you ask a question like if you were wanted to play let's say like a soccer game, and which icon would make you install it from the App
Mhm.
Store, right? So you ask a question, you upload 1 to 8 creatives, you choose your audience anywhere between 50 to 500 people. You can target mobile gamers, you can target gamers, you can target gamers who like different genres, depending on what kind of game you're developing. And then you just pay and launch that poll. It costs $1 per respondent. And then that cost goes up depending on sort of the targeting. And a typical 50 respondent poll, when you hit publish, it goes out right away to our panel. People answer it first come, first serve. A typical 50 response poll will be done within about 30 minutes. So what that means is that it's super fast, right? It's faster than you running off to a coffee shop and asking, hey, what do you think about this? So, hey, what do you think
Yeah,
about this?
that's super
Right?
fast.
Yeah. What our really savvy customers have started doing particularly in mobile games is during that creative process, we'll have artists actually start running Pickfu polls at the beginning of the day, getting the feedback, going back, changing the designs, running another poll, getting feedback again. And so they're actually using Pickfu and that audience feedback to iterate on their designs to get to a better place than where they started.
Mhm. And my bad if I missed this, but so when they say they go get feedback, is that other people who work at Pickfu, or is that some random like users from around the world?
Yeah, so Pickfu has the panel. We have the panel
Mhm.
of over 10,000 US consumers who answer these polls from our customers.
Awesome. So is that something they join Pickfu and then they answer these feedbacks, or is it
Yeah,
something? Yeah. Okay.
yeah.
So I get that. So you just join like a huge community and say, okay, guys,
Well,
check out this.
yeah. I mean, so we're working on our own community, but we generally plug into other communities.
Mm,
So there are these large market research panels out there. And so we've kind of built this layer of quality on top of that, where when you come onto Pickfu and run a poll, then it goes out to our panelists through those panels. And then we kind of collect all the answers and bring it back to you. What we do in between is that we filter out a lot of the bad respondents. So we actually have a lot of different mechanisms, both human and machine curation, to make sure that the people who are responding are actually paying attention to your creatives. They're actually providing good feedback. And I would say that we probably reject almost 30 to 50% of the people who try to come through and answer polls because the quality is just not high enough.
mhm.
Yeah.
That makes sense. But yeah, wow, that's crazy to like disqualify some of them just because they weren't, they didn't pass your standards.
Yeah,
But
exactly.
it's hard to catch those, right? Because it's like you must have a lot of people working on it and the electronic way to automate it so you can find these little moments where you're like that
Yeah,
just
it's like
isn't getting our
yeah.
standards. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like a needle in a haystack. And I mean,
Yeah.
one of the things that we offer for all our customers is that you can flag any respondent. If you found that response wasn't helpful or offensive or you're really not paying attention, you
Mhm.
flag it. We have someone on our team look at it. I mean, they can get warned, they can get banned, they can get blocked, So, I mean, we take that stuff seriously because we want to make sure that the quality is high
Mhm.
for our customers.
No, I love that. And then also I see you do like every stage of the development cycle. So it's not even just like, the idea stage or even marketing a game, but you also say post launch, which
Oh
is really
yeah, for
cool.
sure. Yeah, so post launch was where game developers started using Pickfu, but then they realized that the earlier in the process you start incorporating audience and consumer feedback, the better it's going to be, right? So yeah, because you can only change a game so much once you've gotten to that post-launch phase, and maybe you'll tweak the app icon or something. But if you're starting early on, that can say like imagine how much pain that'll save you if catch feedback early on that hey, this design concept is not resonating with your target audience, right? Like that's just increasing your chances of success in the market that much more.
That'd be amazing. You're just like, hey, we have this amazing character we're gonna add to the second sequel of the game, blah blah blah. You test it, and then they're like, we don't like this, and you're like, but
Yeah.
she's gonna be cool, she's gonna be this and that, and you're like, maybe change it up a little bit, and you change it up a little bit
Have
based on
have you
feedback.
Yeah, I mean, KB, have you been looking at our recent polls? Because I was actually just looking at one yesterday where
Oh
it was
no, I actually
literally,
haven't. Where can I find
yeah,
that?
no, I'm kidding, they're private, but like,
Oh,
no one else can see them. But I'm
you
just
know, I
saying
was
that.
just looking through the secret cameras. I was like,
Oh yeah,
hey, there's
exactly.
the polls.
No, yesterday I was actually looking at one of our recent game polls where it was literally that it was character design, and the developer was providing a description like this is so and so is this kind of like mythical hero from this realm, and like just painting a beautiful picture, and then putting up like 4 different like character art concepts and saying like, which image best matches, your your mental image of what I just described, right? Like,
Mhm.
just, yeah, I mean, it was great. So when you described that, it's like, hey, that's, yeah,
I was like,
perfect.
oh, I knew I got some secret information. I won't tell you
Exactly.
from who, but it's there.
Nice,
No,
nice.
but that's awesome. And then from then on, so what is the next process after you get? So like, what's the pricing for the Pickfu? Is it like, hey, one-time price will support your game throughout each development cycle, or is it like
Yeah, it's a
different?
la
Oh,
carte.
cool.
So yeah, there's no we do have membership plans, but they're not required. You can go straight to Pickfu and just run a poll. Pricing is per respondent, so it starts at $1 per response.
Mhm.
That will go up if, let's say, the targeting is really challenging. Like, it's easier to get a general US audience than it is to get iPhone, like female making over 100K in the Midwest iPhone players who like strategy games or something, right? Which
Mhm.
in theory you could target, but that's going to be harder to find those kinds of people. So that dollar will go up a little bit based on targeting, and that dollar per response will go up a little bit based on how complex the poll is. But typically it's about $1 per response, and you choose anywhere between 50 to 500 people. That's up to you. So at its base cost, it's $50 for a 50-person poll.
Now, what if somebody was just doing this and was afraid that maybe if they put their images out there, character names, game might name, somebody might take their idea? How would you like reassure them that like they're fine to share their idea with the world?
Yeah, that's a great question. So every respondent has to agree to an NDA
Mhm.
before answering any kind of Pickfu polls. We've done millions of responses, and we've never had a complaint from any customer about anything being, like misappropriated or taken or ripped off or whatever. And so, and we work with a couple of different verticals, like a couple of different consumer segments, where they're very protective of their of their IP. So for example, one of the other verticals we work with are people who sell on Amazon. Now, people who sell on Amazon, they're super protective of, hey, I don't want it's since it's such a competitive market, they're super protective of like, hey, I don't want anyone to know what I'm selling. I don't want anyone to see, what kind of image I'm going to be using versus the competition and so on. Um, but yeah, we've never had an issue with those sellers. We've never had an issue with anyone on our mobile gaming, like our gaming side of customers, ever encountering anything like that. So I think the NDA plus our quality controls generally work really well.
Mhm. Okay.
And I would actually say that the flip side, just in terms of taking a step back, like in terms of being in business, one of the things I've learned is also, um, I wouldn't want to say that ideas are a dime a dozen, but most of the time, the earlier you put your idea out there in the market, or at least talk to someone about it, the better your idea is going to get. Like, obviously you're risking, you're always scared that someone's going to take it and run with it. But from what I've seen, usually talking to people about your idea sooner is better than later.
Mhm. No, that's so true. Because there's usually only one person who has the same passion about the idea. Like, sure, anybody can replicate it, but if you're really passionate about it, I think it'll show. And if you
Absolutely.
put your work out there, you can improve upon it to the point where you have something that maybe people could have copied, but it just doesn't hit like like the game or product you made.
Exactly.
So, yeah. And I was also wondering, since you've probably seen a lot of game covers and other game stuff, what is like some tips or some lessons you've seen where people have been like, hey, that's a better choice? Maybe you haven't. I don't know if you've, but you were like, okay, this is what works in some banners, this what doesn't.
Yeah, I mean, I think I will say that it's true that the I think there was this thing going around where for a mobile app icon, if you have a character, the character with the mouth open generally gets more clicks or more installs. Like if you have some cartoon character on your app icon.
Yeah.
We've seen that validated time and again on Pickfu, which is really funny, but I guess it's some weird trick of human nature. I think that what I've seen interesting is that different cultures, I guess it's not surprising, but different cultures will react differently to characters and how they're displayed. So for example, our panel, our audience, like the panel that we offer are all US audiences. So these are like US gamers. What is appropriate to US gamers is apparently very different from what is appropriate to other cultures. So for example, we have a lot of game developers in China who are trying to build games to the US audience. A lot of times what I see from these Chinese game developers is that they will, their female characters are more exposed, let's say, than what we see from like female characters coming from US based game developers. And I mean, I think that's just sort of probably a cultural thing, but definitely when those foreign game developers present these characters to our US audience, they definitely get the feedback that like, hey, whoa, put something on her, like that's just what, like, this is just inappropriate and so on, which I think is super valuable for them, right?
Yeah.
Like if you're building a game for a US audience, then you should really respond to the feedback from the US audience and not necessarily whatever your own cultural, like your own cultural disposition is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, especially because if you market as the US, you want to make sure the US people enjoy it, not because like exactly. I mean, sure, you want everyone to enjoy it, but like you also have to figure out where you're trying to sell this to. Is it to everybody? Is it to the US? Is it to where you live? It just all depends. And also curious, so like some of these lessons you're saying, is that also in the blogs that you have? I saw there was some blog posts about like best tips for mobile games or how to market.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. So we care a lot about our content and sort of sharing what we've learned with our audience. So on our blog, we write about conversion tips and marketing mobile apps, naming your company. I mean, we try to post pretty regularly on a whole bunch of different topics.
How do you maintain the growth of the blog? I've noticed blogs are kind of harder to grow maybe nowadays than they used to, but it's still valuable.
So we have a dedicated content team, dedicated content manager. We care a lot about our content, and so we regularly go through brainstorming sessions to brainstorm new content. We have a set content calendar. Like that stuff matters a lot to us. So we invested it pretty heavily.
Awesome. And you think some of the blogs help just build traction? Like if somebody's searching for something, then they see it's from Pickfu and they're like, oh, what is Pickfu? Yeah. These are like little small moments of like marketing where it's like they're not really marketing, but in a way it is. It's like, hey,
it is. Yeah, it is. I mean, almost everything that you put out there is kind of marketing, right? I mean, and so we see content as kind of a win-win in a bunch of different ways. The content's great for our existing users, like whether they're game developers or like e-commerce sellers and stuff, because we're able to provide more content to our existing users to help improve their businesses and how they're doing things. But at the same time, we're putting it out there and realizing that anyone where this content resonates with, like that's a way for them to discover Pickfu, right? And for them to sort of see Pickfu's viewpoint on what it means to test before you launch and how to test with an audience and all of that stuff. And so that's definitely us sort of building out that funnel of potential, of content for potential users to come and find us.
I'm curious, do you think Pickfu could be used for games beyond mobile games?
Absolutely. We definitely see that beyond mobile games. So we have console game developers using Pickfu as well. I mean, because basically Pickfu is just a great way to test market creatives, like regardless of what you're building. Right. So if you're building on a specific platform, like absolutely you can sort of test all your game concepts, all your game creatives on Pickfu as well.
Okay. Now, what do you see the vision of Pickfu in the next like couple of years?
So our vision is to, I mean, our vision is to kind of democratize market research for small businesses. So so we're working on trying to build out sort of the best panel possible. Um, so not only in the US, but also expanding internationally. So if you're, let's say, if you're developing a game for China, and you want to understand how that Chinese audience is going to respond to your character design, like we want to be able to provide that, like help get those insights for you. So we're basically trying to build out our panel the best way we can, and then also to educate our customers the best different ways to use Pickfu to bring value to their businesses and help them succeed.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. And I also wanted to get a little bit more about you. Like, what's your day to day like? I guess somebody wanted to be you. Is it kind of intimidating at first, but
If
you realize?
anyone wants to drive my kids to school, they are welcome to. Um, no, it's not. No, it's not intimidating. I would say that more than anything else, be sort of being a founder and running a business is, if anything, it's just a lot of distraction. I think it's juggling a lot of balls.
Mhm.
And so the day to day is super interesting, and it's also super random. And I see at this point, instead of trying to do everything ourselves, we kind of see my co-founder and I, we kind of see our roles as supporting the team as much as possible and enabling them to do the things that they're good at, because they're much better than we are at doing whatever it is they do.
Mhm. And so, for anybody who wants to again be in a like co-founder position, how did you learn to lead your team? Did you read books about it? Did you take leadership classes? Like, how do you
Um,
know what's the right way to lead your
we don't
team?
know. We don't know what the right way is, to be honest. Like, we're still figuring this out. We read a lot. We talk to each other a lot about sort of how the team is growing, different dynamics, what the teams need. Like, I mean, it's kind of going at it from like a nurturing perspective of like what is needed to enable everyone on the team to do the best work that they can produce and still be happy, and like with the growth of the company and everything.
Mhm. Okay.
Yeah.
You plan to be co-founder for the next couple for the rest of your life or next couple years, or just curious?
For the foreseeable future, I mean,
Yeah.
honestly, like we've been doing this for a long time. It's super exciting for us. I'm still super passionate about Pickfu and the opportunities. I think what moves me more than anything else, besides just the geeky part about building something neat, is hearing from our customers
Mhm.
and hearing them tell us that, so and so insight really kind of uncovered something in their business or really helped them make a decision that they couldn't otherwise get to. And I think that more than anything is like super meaningful to me.
That's beautiful. And so, but earlier you were saying you're kind of building a community now. So what does that look like, and like where are you building this community?
So I mean, we're still laying the groundwork for building the
Yeah.
community. Yeah, like, so, I mean, we have a wait list, and if people wanted to sign up to be part of that panel, then that's something that will build up. But I mean, we're still building things up on the technical side to be able to sort of support that. We definitely in the future want to be able to unlock more audiences and sort of more panels for people to be able to tap into.
Hmm. And then I was going through like the poll results and all that stuff. What was it like
Yeah.
building this type of website from the ground up, like deciding like that polls to have the responses at the bottom, they could choose like, was it like
Oh,
hard?
like the sort of
Yeah.
the user interact, sort of the UI and the information architecture and stuff.
Yes.
Um, we did it because that's what we wanted as consumers of the information.
Hmm.
That, from a very early point, I think the poll results layout has not changed in over hasn't changed much in about 10 years, and that's because it was efficient for us, right? Like, show the question, show the options, and show what people have said about them, and then as well as providing some demographic information about all the different people who answered that poll. That was a layout that worked for us. We've revised it a couple times over the years. We'll probably keep adding value to it as much as we can, as much as we're able to. And so I do expect to see it evolve, but we're pretty happy with where things are at this moment.
Beautiful. And so before we, wrap this up, I wanted to dive deep, maybe even before Pickfu. I mean, you worked at Microsoft, right?
Yeah.
So what was that journey like? Like, how did you get there? Was that like right after school? Or did you have a moment before you got to school? You were like, oh no, do I have a job or not? What was that?
Yeah, no, that was, I went to Microsoft right after school, like right after
Mm-hmm.
graduation. And I thought it was a very interesting experience. The culture there was very competitive, I would say. I think they hired a lot of very smart people, but I think it was sort of like a very not as much of a collaborative culture as I would have hoped. But you got to learn a lot of things, a lot of interesting things. I loved seeing the software development process from within a very large organization at the time, and sort of seeing all the different players and different steps and how things move through the pipeline to actually create what it means to create like a finished software product with a certain level of quality. Because that's coming from school, that's not something that you ever see, right?
Yeah.
In sort of industry grade practices of like, what does it mean to do a proper code review? What does it mean to pass enough tests to actually be able to commit to like the main branch and to actually do production? And so that was definitely super eye-opening. I think the things that I saw and learned there definitely helped us at least set the bar for how we built our software afterwards, like when we were in business for ourselves.
Mm-hmm. Can you say you probably learned more in Microsoft than school, or?
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. I mean, I think I look at my school experience as sort of learning the fundamentals of, like programming, algorithms, like data structures, all that basic stuff. And then that's kind of building the framework on top of which, the real world experience actually adds like flesh to the framework of,
Mm-hmm.
okay, this is the level of quality, and this is to what extent you need to build at this point to be able to launch something. This is the process for actually building out features and launching them and deciding which features to launch, which products to launch, what the market wants. All that other stuff came after like a basic, like core understanding in college.
Mm-hmm. So let's see, you got the foundation in college, but then you went to this job right away after school. Did you feel intimidated at first? Because it was like,
Oh, totally.
yeah. So
Totally.
how did you get through that, and what would like advice you have for someone in the same shoes?
I think everyone goes through imposter syndrome. I think most people are going through imposter syndrome at any given point. So just sort of ignore the doubting voices and do the work is kind of the best, like,
Mhm.
I think you can either sit there and worry about it or just do the work. And usually if you just choose to do the work, you'll end up with a better outcome.
I love that. Sit there worrying about it or just do the work. Like just
Yeah.
that's it. Just do it.
Just do it. Just do it.
So yeah, this has been awesome. We learned a lot about Pickfu, learned a lot about you, and then learned about just doing the work, not worrying
Cool.
about it.
Yeah.
And so I always ask the guests at the end for like a challenge. If you can come up with a small challenge for the listeners to do after the podcast, could be about
Yeah.
anything, could be about marketing, Pickfu, programming, whatever you can come up with.
Yeah. So I would say that my challenge would be to anyone listening is to take something from your project and go get feedback on it. And it doesn't have to be Pickfu. Probably shouldn't be Pickfu, but you should go get feedback on it, because a lot of times creators are living in their heads and could really benefit from at least one outside opinion on something that they're working on.
Mm-hmm. No, I agree 100%. No, that's a really good challenge, and I can't wait to see the responses to that one. But yeah, so thank you for coming on, John. This was so good. I'm so
Yeah.
glad you came on and shared your story and Pickfu. And honestly, I never really knew about Pickfu until the email and to you guys. And
Cool.
it looks like it's something that even my company, GameDev.tv, can use, or other people can use for their games. So this is gonna be great. I can't wait to see your response for that.
I would be happy to have you try it out, and I would love to get your feedback on it. So
Awesome. Yeah, no, I would love to check that out.
Cool.
So yeah, so thanks for coming on. And I'd like to end it off by handing the mic to you to do any last minute shout outs, quotes, tips, however you want to end it off. And thank you again for coming on, and the mic's all yours.
Cool. Thanks, KB. Yeah, thanks for having me on. Love chatting with you. And I think that, like I said, we built this company from getting feedback, and I think that a lot of people can benefit from getting feedback too. If you're interested in getting feedback from US consumers for your games, then check out Pickfu, pickfu.com.
Well, that's it. Thanks for listening. You can find all courses at GameDev.tv or in the show notes at a discounted price. Get started with your game development journey today.